The Old Farmer. In a quiet village surrounded by green hills, there lived an old farmer named Thomas. He was known by everyone in the village because he worked harder than anyone else. Every morning before sunrise, he walked to his farm carrying his old wooden tools. Thomas lived alone in a small house near the river. His wife had passed away many years ago, and his only son had moved to another city. Even though Thomas felt lonely sometimes, he never complained. The villagers often asked him, "Thomas, why do you still work so hard at your age?" Thomas would smile and reply, "The earth rewards those who respect it." But there was one secret Thomas never shared with anyone. Behind his small house, hidden under an old tree, there was a tiny wooden box. Inside the box were strange golden seeds. Every night before sleeping, Thomas opened the box carefully and looked at the shining seeds. "They changed my life once," he whispered, "and maybe one day they will change someone else's life too." The poor boy. One cold evening, a young boy named Daniel arrived in the village. His clothes were old and dusty, and his shoes were torn. Daniel had lost his parents when he was very young. Since then, he traveled from town to town looking for work. The villagers ignored him. Some people closed their doors when they saw him. Others said, "We already have enough workers." Hungry and tired, Daniel sat near the river. That was when Thomas saw him. The old farmer slowly walked toward the boy. "You look exhausted," Thomas said kindly. Daniel lowered his head. "I haven't eaten since yesterday," he admitted. Thomas nodded. "Come with me." Daniel followed the old man to his small house. Thomas gave him warm soup and fresh bread. For the first time in many days, Daniel smiled. "Thank you," he said softly. Thomas looked at him carefully. "There's sadness in your eyes," he said. Daniel sighed. "I don't belong anywhere." Thomas remained silent for a moment. Then he said, "Sometimes life plants us in difficult soil so we can grow stronger." A new beginning. The next morning, Daniel helped Thomas on the farm. He carried water, cleaned tools, and planted vegetables. Thomas noticed something special about the boy. Even when he was tired, Daniel never stopped working. Days turned into weeks. Daniel continued living with Thomas. Slowly, the small farm became more beautiful. The vegetables grew larger. The trees looked healthier. The villagers began to notice the changes. One afternoon, a neighbor asked Thomas, "Who is this boy?" Thomas smiled. "He's someone the world forgot," he replied. Daniel heard those words. For the first time in years, tears filled his eyes. Nobody had ever cared about him like that before. That night, while they sat beside the fireplace, Daniel asked, "Why are you helping me?" Thomas looked into the fire. "Because someone once helped me," he answered. The hidden story. Rain fell heavily outside. The fire crackled softly. Daniel waited quietly. Thomas took a deep breath. "When I was young," he began, "I was poorer than you." Daniel looked surprised. "I had no family, no home, and no hope." Thomas stared at his rough hands. "One day, I met an old traveler. The traveler gave Thomas a small wooden box. Inside were golden seeds. The traveler told me these seeds were magical," Thomas said. Daniel's eyes widened. "Magical." Thomas nodded slowly. "But not in the way people think." The old farmer continued. "The traveler said the seeds would only grow in the hands of someone with patience, kindness, and honesty." Thomas planted the seeds carefully. At first, nothing happened. Days passed, then weeks. Thomas almost gave up. But one morning, tiny golden plants appeared. They shined brightly under the sunlight. The crops became healthier than ever before. Soon, Thomas earned enough money to buy land and build his home. Daniel listened carefully. "Where are the seeds now?" he asked. Thomas looked toward the window. "They're still here." The secret box. Late that night, Thomas carried the wooden box to the table. Daniel stared at it silently. Thomas opened the box. Inside were 5 glowing golden seeds. They looked beautiful, almost unreal. Daniel whispered, "They're incredible." Thomas nodded. "I've protected them for many years." "Why?" Daniel asked. "Because greed destroys good things," Thomas replied. Thomas explained that many people once tried to steal the seeds. Some believed the seeds could make them rich instantly. Others thought they had magical powers. But they never understood the truth, Thomas said. Daniel frowned. "What truth?" Thomas smiled gently. "The seeds only reward good hearts." The greedy merchant. A few days later, a wealthy merchant named Victor arrived in the village. Victor owned many shops and farms. But despite his riches, he always wanted more. He heard rumors about Thomas and the golden seeds. Immediately, he became interested. Victor visited Thomas's farm wearing expensive clothes and shiny boots. "I heard you have something valuable," Victor said. Thomas remained calm. "I only have vegetables and hard work." Victor laughed. "You can't fool me, old man." Daniel stood nearby silently. Victor pulled out a bag full of money. "I'll pay you more money than you've ever seen." Thomas shook his head. "The seeds are not for sale." Victor's smile disappeared. "Everyone has a price," he said coldly. Thomas looked directly into his eyes. "No, not everyone." Victor left angrily. But Daniel noticed something dangerous in the merchant's face. The stormy night. That evening, dark clouds covered the sky. Strong winds shook the trees. Thomas locked the doors carefully. "Stay alert tonight," he told Daniel. Hours later, thunder roared loudly. Suddenly, Daniel heard footsteps outside. He looked through the window. 3 shadowy figures moved toward the house. "Thomas," Daniel whispered urgently. The old farmer woke up immediately. The door burst open. Victor and 2 men entered. "Give me the seeds." Victor shouted. Thomas stood firmly. "They don't belong to greedy people." Victor pushed Thomas aside and searched the house wildly. Daniel tried to stop him. One of the men grabbed Daniel roughly. "Where is the box?" Victor yelled. Thomas stayed silent. Victor became furious. "You'll regret this." But then something strange happened. The wind outside grew stronger. The lights flickered. And suddenly, the wooden box fell from a shelf. The golden seeds rolled across the floor. Victor rushed toward them. He grabbed one seed quickly. But the moment he touched it, the glowing light disappeared. The seed turned black. Victor stared at it in shock. "What happened?" he whispered. Thomas looked calm. "The seeds know the truth inside every heart." The lesson. Victor tried another seed. Again, the golden light vanished. Fear filled his face. "This can't be real," he said. Thomas slowly picked up the remaining seeds. "They only grow with kindness," he said. Victor looked embarrassed. For the first time in years, he realized his greed had controlled his life. The storm outside slowly became quieter. Victor lowered his head. "I spent my whole life chasing money," he admitted. Thomas replied softly, "And yet you still look unhappy." Victor had no answer. He left the house silently with his men. Daniel watched him disappear into the darkness. "Do you think he will change?" Daniel asked. Thomas smiled. "Sometimes storms change people too." Planting the seeds. Spring arrived. The air felt warm and fresh. Thomas handed Daniel one golden seed. "It's time," he said. Daniel looked nervous. "What if I fail?" Thomas placed a hand on his shoulder. Good hearts never truly fail. Together, they planted the seed in rich soil near the river. Every day, Daniel watered it carefully. He protected it from insects and storms. But weeks passed. Nothing grew. Daniel became discouraged. "Maybe I'm not worthy," he said sadly. Thomas shook his head. Patience is part of the lesson. Daniel continued caring for the soil. Then one morning, he saw something shining. A tiny golden sprout emerged from the earth. Daniel smiled with excitement. It grew. He shouted. Thomas laughed warmly. Yes, because you never gave up. The miracle harvest. The golden plant grew faster than anyone expected. Soon, it became taller than the other crops. Its leaves shimmered under sunlight. People from nearby villages came to see it. Some called it a miracle. Others called it magic. But Thomas simply called it the reward of patience. When harvest season arrived, the farm produced more food than ever before. There was enough for everyone. Poor families received free vegetables. Hungry children smiled again. The village slowly changed. People became kinder to each other. Even Victor returned. This time, he brought food and supplies for struggling families. Daniel looked surprised. "You changed," he told Victor. Victor nodded. "I realized wealth means nothing if your heart is empty." Thomas smiled proudly. Thomas falls sick. One winter morning, Thomas did not wake up early. Daniel entered his room and found him coughing badly. "You need a doctor," Daniel said worriedly. Thomas smiled weakly. "I'm just old." But the sickness became worser. Days passed. Thomas grew weaker. Daniel stayed beside him every night. One evening, Thomas looked at Daniel carefully. "You've become the son I never had nearby," he whispered. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "You gave me a family," he replied. Thomas slowly handed him the wooden box. "The seeds belong to you now." Daniel shook his head. "No, you'll recover." Thomas smiled gently. Everything in life has seasons. The final lesson. Snow covered the village. The fire burned softly. Thomas looked peaceful. "Listen carefully," he told Daniel. Daniel sat beside him silently. The real secret of the golden seeds was never magic. Daniel frowned. Thomas continued. "The seeds only remind people of what truly matters." He took a slow breath. Patience, kindness, honesty, hope. Tears rolled down Daniel's face. Thomas smiled one last time. "Plant those things wherever you go." That night, the old farmer peacefully passed away. The village bells rang softly the next morning. Everyone came to honor him. Even Victor cried, because Thomas had changed all their lives. Years later, many years passed. Daniel became the owner of the farm. But he never forgot Thomas's lessons. He helped poor travelers. He shared food with hungry families. And every year, he planted one golden seed. The farm became famous across the country. People traveled from far away to learn its secret. But Daniel never spoke about magic. Instead, he told them this: "The earth gives back what the heart plants." One afternoon, a little girl arrived at the farm. Her clothes were old. Her eyes looked tired. Daniel immediately remembered himself. The girl asked quietly, "Can I work here for food?" Daniel smiled warmly. "Yes," he said. Then he opened the wooden box. Inside, several golden seeds still glowed brightly. Daniel looked toward the sky, and for a moment, he imagined Thomas smiling. The true treasure. As the years continued, the village became one of the happiest places in the region. Nobody slept hungry. Neighbors helped each other. Children laughed freely. Travelers always found kindness there. People often asked Daniel, "What is the true power of the golden seeds?" Daniel always gave the same answer: "The seeds only grow where love and kindness already exist." Many people expected a different answer. They wanted stories about magic and treasure. But Daniel understood something important. The greatest treasure was not gold. It was a good heart, the last seed. One evening, when Daniel became old like Thomas once was, he opened the wooden box. Only one golden seed remained. Daniel held it carefully. He remembered every lesson, every struggle, every moment of kindness. Outside, the sunset painted the sky orange and gold. Suddenly, Daniel heard a knock on the door. A young boy stood outside. The boy looked hungry and afraid. "Sir," he said softly, "I have nowhere to go." Daniel smiled gently. He saw himself in the boy's eyes, and in that moment he finally understood. The real secret was never inside the box. The real secret was passed from one kind heart to another. Daniel welcomed the boy inside. The warm fire glowed softly, and on the table the final golden seed continued shining brightly. Ending. Life is like a seed. Whatever we plant in the hearts of others will grow someday. Kindness creates kindness. Hope creates hope. And love never truly disappears. Sometimes, the smallest acts of goodness become the greatest treasures in the world. The end.